Hello everyone, welcome to the Startup Talk on the story behind NERv Technology. NERv Technology is a startup based on Ontario, Canada, and they actually won the global final of Entrepreneurship World Cup last year. They actually beat the 165,000 entrepreneurs, 187 plus countries all over the world participated in last year's Entrepreneurship World Cup. So we have with us Amr Abdelgawad, co-founder and COO of NERv Technology. We'll listen more from him regarding his journey. So let's get started. Amr, can you tell a bit about you and your startup a bit so that our participant can know a bit about you and also your startup and where it is?
Thanks. For sure. Thanks a lot, Asif, for having me here today. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well and staying safe where you are. By way of introduction, I'm Amr Abdelgawad, the Chief Operating Officer and one of the co-founders of NERv. We're a medical device startup based in Canada, developing solutions to help monitor patients after surgery in order to identify complications at their onset. Just a little bit of a brief background about myself. I was actually born and raised in Saudi Arabia. Spent the first 18 years of my life over there and then moved to Canada in 2011 to pursue an undergraduate degree in nanotechnology engineering. And while I was in my third year of undergrad, my co-founder Yusuf and I came across the problem that we're tackling today at NERv, which is the period after a surgery, where there can be a little bit of anxiety on the patient side, on the surgeon side, not knowing if the surgery went well or not, pretty much trying to identify if a complication has developed, which is now more of a reactive game. You have to wait for patients to demonstrate symptoms before we can intervene and figure out what the best way to try to treat that problem would be. So we're trying to bring that time, which is today a number of days, to potentially down to hours and minutes in order to identify the complication at their onset, changing it from a reactive process to more of a proactive process.
Okay. So, I mean, the journey is, a great journey you have started. So my question is like, when you, so far I know about you, you have started during your, graduation period. So many of the students in our country as well, also in some other countries, when they are actually studying undergrad, they actually think about to do some job for the companies. So what make you think of to start the business rather finding the job for, doing the job for other country,
Yeah, so part of our journey at the University of Waterloo, our educational background, involves being part of what is known as a co-op program. So during the co-op program, you essentially get to work for other companies while you study while you get your degree. So at the time when we started NERv, I think I had completed already 3 or 4 internships. So I had a little bit of experience working at other companies. Which is in a way the reason why I maybe had the courage to also start my own business. I had a little bit of that industry experience, very limited, but a little bit of it at least. And partly, I don't think I would have started working on my own business without having some of that industry knowledge. So that was one of the main reasons. But another reason, to be honest, is when I was leaving Saudi Arabia and coming to Canada, one of my really good friends, his father actually sat down with me and one of my close friends back then, and he was telling us, before you leave, before you head to Canada, make sure you do something that has an impact on people's lives. Make sure you're a good representation of your culture, your religion, your country. You're going out there essentially to represent us. So make sure you go and have an impact. So that was something that was always in the back of my mind as well. And I guess these combination of factors eventually led to us starting our own business. It might have been a little bit of an adventure and a little bit of a courageous thing to do to start while we're in school, but we had nothing to lose at this point. It was a small project that we were starting, and we felt like this can actually go somewhere and turn into a startup idea. That's how the journey began.
Okay, so that's amazing. So you actually you are a great example for the young guns who actually are starting the business rather finding the job for other company. So how is the journey? So from so far I know you have participated some other competitions other than the Entrepreneurship World Cup. So how is the journey? So as the from the very first competition to the big competition. So how is the journey? So let us know about a bit.
Yeah, for sure. So our story actually began in 2014. That's when we first started working on NERv as an idea, as a business opportunity, and it was just myself and Yusuf. Back then, it was, as I told you, a little bit of a project that we were taking on. We weren't really sure where it was heading, but it was a problem that was told to us by someone dear to Yusuf, his own mother, and that's why we started tackling it. When we started diving into the problem a little bit further, we realized how big of an issue this is and how big of a problem in terms of the number of patients that tend to die annually because of complications that go undetected, the number of surgeons who say that gastrointestinal leaks is the complication that they fear the most. So it dawned upon us how big of an opportunity and how much of a gap there is in the market. So slowly we started to gain some traction as we went out and pitched this idea within the university setting, within the ecosystem that we have here in Waterloo, in very small competitions. And I actually remember the first competition that we ever participated in. It was part of the University of Waterloo. The top prize was $5,000. We won that prize. And funny enough, Yusuf and I were actually going through that pitch a few months ago, and we were looking at it, and we could see the transition of how the company changed from, I think it was 2015. That was when that pitch competition was, very early in 2015, and how everything looks like today. And the product changed, the market opportunity for us changed, the way we were tackling it, who our customers were, our vision for the company, all of that changed in those 5 years. And it could take probably hours if we would sit down and talk about it. But just as a brief overview, in terms of the problem that we were tackling, which was post-operative complications, we were very ambitious back then. We were a bunch of 20, 21-year-olds trying to take on the world, thinking that we would solve all post-operative complications at the time. And then we started to narrow it down over time until we pinpointed on one particular complication, which is gastrointestinal leaks. And during that time frame as well, the product, the design, trying to find that product market fit was part of the journey, trying to understand what is the best solution for the problem that we're tackling it. So that evolved over time as well. And eventually it got to a point where we have a solution today that has been tested in animal models and in a clinical setting. So there's definitely a lot of things that changed, a lot of the way the team grew. We were just 2 individuals when we started. Today we're a team of 14. So things have changed in the last 6 years.
So another thing I have found very interesting, that is your background. Actually, you are from, so far I know you are an engineer. You're an engineer, but you are doing business that is on, Meditech. So how you actually evolve these sort of things, and what make you actually think of this problem to solve? And is there any problem you have found that as an engineer and doing the business on Meditech? So do you find any problem, or how actually you are get involved into this?
Yeah, so more than one factor. I think part of me growing up always combined that engineering and medical know-how or background to a certain extent, just because of the extension of my own family. So my dad's an engineer, my mom's a doctor. I used to go with my dad to a lot of his sites, to his work. And I sort of was more inclined to be an engineer, but at the same time, I used to spend a lot of time with my mom as well, attending conferences with her. So that medical, let's say to a certain extent, know-how was part of me growing up. And I was interested in the space, but I never really pursued it. Now, when I got into nanotechnology engineering, which to a lot of people who might not know this, but nanotechnology engineering is so broad. There are so many applications that you can potentially utilize nanotechnology engineering in. It wasn't really specific to us as to what we were going to specialize in when we graduate. But given that part of me growing up was exposed to a lot of medical problems, and once again, that thought in my mind about me having an impact on people's lives, I started realizing that we can bring that nanotechnology engineering background into use and hopefully put it into a product or a solution that can help people and have an impact on their lives. So that's how that intersection of engineering and medicine came together. Now, that being said, we obviously don't have an extensive medical background, and it took us a lot of time to be able to understand the problem itself from a medical perspective, from the perspective of a surgeon, what their needs are, what their problems are, what do they usually face. And that's where Yusuf's mother actually came into the picture and helped build a full, extensive picture for us on what the problem actually looks like. And it was a learning experience. I can't say right now that I have enough experience or background as what a surgeon would have, but I think I have enough know-how and understanding of the problem to be able to help deliver on a solution with our team to potentially tackle this extensive problem.
Okay, so now comes to EWC. So this was fantastic. I have heard your final pitch and so on. So you are so so confident, and you have shown the capability. And the process is like the 3-minute pitch and 2-minute judging. So in the 3-minute, the way you present in front of the judges, the prominent judges from all over the world. So what is your advice to the participant of this year? So what actually make them to be enough compatible for the global competition?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot to unpack here. 3 minutes, first of all, is a very short period of time, and it's probably one of the shortest periods of time that you can try to present a full business idea in. One of the most important things that I always say is, first of all, know your audience. You need to know who you're presenting to. And based on that, you'll be able to craft your pitch accordingly. But within those 3 minutes, you want to make sure you capture their attention in the first probably 10 to 15 seconds. I think that's probably the most important time frame where you can probably either capture someone's attention or lose it altogether. Seconds, you've pretty much lost your opportunity at this point to convince them that your business idea is probably the one that needs to win.
Yes.
That being said, be very succinct and precise in what you're trying to deliver. So in terms of the problem, in terms of the solution, make sure you get to the point right away and explain it in a way where a 5-year-old would understand it or a 75-year-old would understand it.
Yeah.
So be sure to know that everyone in the audience is probably not an expert in your space and in your industry. So try to dumb it down as much as possible and bring it down to a level where everyone would understand it. And practice. At this point, the more you practice, the more you're going to be confident in delivering your message. So that's another piece that everyone needs to be focusing on. And finally, make sure you're delivering a story. Don't focus on memorizing a script and going out to present it. Just be natural. Come out very natural in your presentation, because over here, when you're really genuine, people are going to see it. And if you try to memorize something and you go out and maybe stumble or fumble on one word, you're going to lose whatever the rest of your presentation, and you're going to forget about what you were planning to say next. So just be very natural and genuine about it. And when you go out and pitch, make sure you're pitching a story.
Okay, so that's great advice from the global champion of last year. So another thing I want to ask you, that is this is the one of the question that came from the participant. That is, just let me check. So what are the things you actually from your perspective you need to consider before going to start any venture?
There's a lot of things. First of all, make sure you understand the market really well. A lot of people, when they look at a problem, they think they might have the solution for it, and they start developing that solution right away without interviewing and talking to as many customers as possible. And in your head, you might think that this solution is the best solution for the problem, when in reality, your customers are actually facing a completely different problem. And by going out and validating the problem, first of all, and then validating the solution that you're working on and making sure that there is what is known as the product market fit, that's the point in time where you're going to be developing the right solution for a specific problem, and you'll be able to build a proper business from it. And a lot of people fail to do that early on. And to a certain extent, we were also guilty of doing that, because in the medical industry, for example, there are so many stakeholders who are involved in decision making and in the purchase of the product. So for example, there are physicians, nurses, hospital administrators, regulatory experts who decide on whether a product will even be approved or not. And then there's also the reimbursement piece. So you have to think about the different angles and make sure you're developing a solution that checks all the boxes for all of these stakeholders. Once you have that in place, you need to figure out the right resources in order to be able to build out that team. And one of those resources is obviously the intellectual resource, or the team, the human resources that you have. So make sure you're building a team with the right skill sets, the right individuals who can help you achieve certain milestones in order to eventually get that product to market.
Okay. Another important thing is when you start the business, you have to think of your team. Team is very important because, as you know, if you don't have, I have seen the many of the failure, the startup who actually failed because of their team, basically. So when you actually start the business, so far I know you have 3 or 4 co-founders, right?
Yeah.
3 to 4. So how you actually pick them, and what are the skill sets you actually when you said talk to them or think of them as your startup co-founder, so what are the things you have considered regarding this?
Yeah, so as I said, when it first started off, it was myself and Yusuf to begin with as co-founders. Maybe we were a little lucky in the sense of how we set up our co-founding team, because when we started looking for people with the right skill sets to work with, we were in a university setting that allowed us to find those co-founders easily. And Waterloo, to a certain extent, is entrepreneurial in nature, so you will find a lot of students or early graduates or recent graduates who are willing to take on startup journeys and new entrepreneurial ideas. So finding those co-founders within our ecosystem was fairly easy to a certain extent. But it wasn't just about finding the skill set, in my opinion. It was also making sure that we find individuals who are a good cultural fit, people you are comfortable working with, people you think you can get along with very easily. Because from what I've seen, sometimes the failure doesn't come from the fact that you didn't select the right person with the right skill set. It's just that it becomes more of a toxic relationship that you can't work together. And that on its own is one of the reasons why teams sometimes can't work together and end up breaking up. So it was a combination of finding the right skill set and finding the right people to work with that we are comfortable working with. And some of those people are people were within our network. We already knew from before, we already engaged with. And that's why we were comfortable taking them on as part of the co-founding team.
That's very important. I so far I know. So another question come from one of the participants, that is before going to start. So you have to think about the money and the investment. So when you actually go for the first investment, pitch to the investor. So is it like before going to start having the traction and so on, or just on the idea stage?
Funding is also one of the topics that can be broken. I'll tell you our journey and then what typically would go in a normal startup. For us, when we first started off, we weren't really thinking about funding because, as I told you, it was for us just a very simple project that we were taking on, and we weren't really sure if this was going to go somewhere until we started getting that traction from competitions, and we got some funding to begin working on the startup idea. So when we first began, we pretty much had no money. We went out, we competed in a few pitch competitions. I think we won a total of roughly $100,000 in the first year. And that's when we started realizing that we can build on that and eventually start to fundraise. But typically, and I'm speaking from the perspective of a deep tech startup that requires a lot of research in order to eventually get to a point where you have a product that can be taken to market. You do have the opportunity in certain countries, and I can't speak on behalf of all countries, but I'll be speaking at least on behalf of Canada, to access a number of research grants that can help you validate or build your solution. And that's how we started raising the first non-dilutive funding that we got into NERv. which is going out, working with researchers, getting grants to support the R&D that is put into the project very early on. And then once we validated that solution and made sure that it's working, that's when we went out to pitch in competitions, pitch in front of incubators, accelerators, which provided us with some of that early funding to begin with. And then once you do that and you gain some of that traction and you feel like your business is even growing further and you've validated from more than one perspective on the funding side, on the business side, you go to what is known as the 3 Fs, the friends, family, and fools. These are people who believe in you and maybe believe in the business idea and the potential behind it and just want to support you early on. So we raised some more funding from that, what is known as the angel group that we began with. I think we raised close to $750,000 just from angels, friends, and family. And then we went out to raise our seed round after that. And obviously there were many milestones along the way that needed to be achieved to be able to unlock the next round of funding and so on. But I think we've been consistent as well in the milestones that we set for ourselves and how we achieve them to demonstrate to people that we've been able to actually deliver on what we say we are going to deliver on. And I think that's a very important aspect because that's what builds confidence in the investor that you're speaking to, that you're actually going to be able to get this business somewhere. And I think that's something that we did well on our ends. And we also were ambitious in the goals that we were setting. And we've been able to achieve them. So I think that's partly why we've been able to unlock more funding.
So that's good. So this was a great advice from you. And another thing is that many times I have heard from the startups that the role of the mentors, the industry expert before going to start. So how you actually think of that?
Yeah. So as I told you, when we first started off, we were a bunch of 20, 21-year-olds probably trying to tackle one of the biggest industries in the world and one of the more regulated industries, which is the medical device space. So A, we didn't have any medical background or enough medical background to tackle this problem. B, we didn't have any startup experience. C, we didn't have any industry experience beside a few co-ops and internships that we had. So we were lacking in all three aspects, and we definitely needed people to come on board to help us understand the space, understand how to take a startup, and understand how to tackle the industry. So when we first started off, we realized that we needed to have mentors to be able to support us. Now, in order to get those mentors, it wasn't also a simple process. We needed to make sure that the people that we're working with are people who are willing to dedicate some time to support us and are actually interested in supporting us because they like us, they like what we're trying to do, and they like our mission. So the process of finding mentors wasn't going to be an easy task, and it's usually not an easy task because you need to make sure that you find the right person that you want to work with. And that was a back and forth process in terms of interviews, going on LinkedIn and stalking some people and talking to them, participating in accelerators and incubators, and growing this network over time. And whether these people were full-time mentors or part-time mentors or people that we would ad hoc reach out to and ask for questions whenever we had some doubts about a specific direction, it was a combination of all of those. But we did have some dedicated mentors who were working with us, for example, such as people within our incubator program here at the University of Waterloo who were working with us pretty much on a weekly basis to try to make sure we craft the right pitch, we craft the right message, and work on a business model that makes sense, that is relevant to the industry that we're going after.
Okay. So now it's my question basically. So you have won the competition in November last year, 2019. So before November 2019 and after November 2019, I think you have your everything actually changed a lot. So how actually EWC and also Global Entrepreneurship Network help you to do something better than before?
Oh, 100%. As you said, before November 2019 was one thing, and after November 2019 became the exposure that we got after the competition. Saudi Arabia and maybe even if I would and then back here in Canada. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
All right. So I was saying the exposure that we got in Saudi Arabia, parts of the Middle East, and in Canada helped unlock a number of things for us. We were in the middle of raising a seed round when we were going through the competition, and just by the sheer weight of the competition and the sheer volume of the competition, we were able to unlock more investors who actually came on board as part of the seed round. In terms of interests from physicians, we actually were reached out by a number of physicians who knew about us because of the competition, and we started establishing some relationships with those individuals. The network that we gained as part of the competition, the number of people that we started to know after the competition, grew extensively, and these people are either A, part of our investor network today, or B, part of our industry network that we can rely on and tap into in the future. Right after the competition, I remember the competition ended on the 14th of November. I was supposed to leave Saudi Arabia on the 15th of November to come to Canada. Just because of winning the competition, I ended up coming back to Canada December 26th. I spent a month and a half in the Middle East just because of winning the competition and the amount of engagements that we had right after. So it definitely flipped flipped the image for us 180 degrees, and things changed significantly after winning. So I would say this was probably one of the bigger turning points or inflection points for us at NERv.
Okay. So another question come from one of the participants, that is, do you think what about the entrepreneurship education nowadays? It is, many of the lot of accelerators and incubators are coming up, and also many of the university have their own program on entrepreneurship. So what do you think about these sort of programs, or how actually the participants or the who actually want to start their business? So how is it really helpful, or something you want to suggest something else for them?
Yeah, so I think there sometimes might be a lot of noise around you in terms of trying to figure out where exactly you need to start and begin with, and which programs you're supposed to be a part of, which accelerator should I join, who should I be listening to. And I think to a certain extent, you need to understand what you need and what you're lacking in. A lot of these programs, a lot of these accelerators are offering so much advice that sometimes that advice is not what you need today. It might be what you need 2 years from now, but you need to know what you need today. And based on that, you should start filtering through programs, these courses, to try to feed it today and then break it up into different parts or different aspects of what your business requires, at least in the next 6 months to a year. Once you understand that, you'll be able to figure out exactly which program to go for. But at the end of the day, what I would highly recommend is that if you don't have any entrepreneurial background, is to surround yourself by the right people. Make sure you have people who have industry knowledge, industry know-how in terms of taking your startup from point A to point B. And sometimes that point B is not the end goal. Sometimes it's the next inflection point that will help you get to point C, point D, and so on until you grow your business to the end goal that you're trying to get to.
Okay. So that's good thing. Good to know from you. Another thing is, like, so before as I said earlier, before starting the session, that is, I have heard your pitch, and that in that 3 minute, how specific you was, and also the way you present in front of the judges, it was phenomenal. And like in last year's Entrepreneurship World Cup global final, there are the startups like who actually have investment more than like 150 million plus investment was there. Also, some of the startup has that, fraction of or revenue is more than 8 to 9 million a month. So what was in your mind that you are competing with such companies as a very newcomer? So what was in your mind?
A lot of things. I can definitely share a part of it. And going on to that stage, just before that last, I guess we were top 10 at the time when we were pitching. Going up on that stage, I knew what I was going up against, and I knew that my competition and the competitor who was standing right next to me was a company that is very successful. They're in our same space, and they're definitely a few steps ahead of us. So I had that in my mind going up, and I knew that it was going to be a challenge. But I was also fairly confident in what we were delivering, what our message was, and what our mission was. And at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure the judges had a hard time selecting who should go through, because it wasn't obvious, it wasn't clear. It was a very difficult decision to make. If I were in their place, I wouldn't know what to do. But I think what really mattered was that we managed to practice that pitch so well to figure out exactly what needs to be said in those 3 minutes. And sometimes it's difficult for the judges or the individuals that you're speaking to try to understand exactly how your problem and your solution tie together. And one of the judges after that competition actually came up to us and told us that one of the reasons why we made it through was because we managed to deliver on that message really well. We managed to tie these two together in a way that was clear, succinct, and got to the point really quickly, that gave us the opportunity to present the rest of our business opportunity really well. And I think that was probably the deciding factor at this point, and maybe that's what helped us go through to the next round.
Exactly.
But one of the things that I really need to highlight is that all 10 competitors at this stage were of the top caliber, and they were amazing companies, and honestly, it was a very difficult decision for the judges.
Yeah. So again, from my side, a huge congratulations for winning the last year's global. So it was phenomenal journey. So far I know it is around 165,000 plus entrepreneurs from 187 countries were participated in the last year's Entrepreneurship World Cup, and among those 100,000 people, 100,000 and 65,000 entrepreneurs, best entrepreneurs, you are the champion. So you are the best out the best. I mean, so far I know. So another 5 to 10 minutes we will talk. And so, what is just let us know the role as a CEO or the founder. What is your task? This is a very silly question, I know, but somehow people actually wanted to know what is the role of a CEO and COO, what they actually do.
I actually get that question a lot. You're not the only one who asked it. But sometimes I have this running joke in the company that my title should be CEO, which stands for Chief Email Officer, because I spend most of my day on emails. But I guess at the stage of the company that we're at today, as a Chief Operating Officer, you still wear a bunch of different hats. And no matter what your title is at a company, I feel like you're always wearing different hats. So things that I tackle, for example, on a day-to-day basis include things that are related to finance, business development, a little bit of maybe market development and exploration, identifying different verticals that we can potentially tap into, financial projections, operations. These are all different things that I sometimes take a look at. You also take a look at accounting, finance. You try to also understand the legal structure of your business. These are all things that I would work on pretty much on a day-to-day basis. But sometimes you're going to find yourselves in a position where you're going to tackle a problem or take on a role or a responsibility in the company just because of how limited your resources are and how small of a team you're going to be. So one day you might find yourself, for example, in the lab. The next day you might be going out and talking to a customer. So you have to be able to be flexible to a certain extent and wear all of these different hats and assume these different roles. So I wouldn't necessarily tie a title per se to the specific roles and responsibilities, but as you start growing the business and you start growing your team, that's the point in time where you have to be a little bit more specific in the roles you're doing, just so that you feel like you're concentrated and you're productive and you're actually moving this business forward. Early on, when we were assuming different roles, it was obviously because we didn't have a big team and we had to do it. But I started feeling that as the business was growing, there are more and more responsibilities that are becoming focused to your role and your position in a company. And that's when we started realizing that we needed to expand our team, hire more people, and onboard people with specific experiences to focus on specific aspects of the project.
Okay, so that's awesome. So another question come from that. So you have already shared this, but somehow for the participant, as they asked, that is, you have done your graduation from engineering department, but what is the reason behind, becoming an entrepreneur? So just a one or two sentences you can share, because you already shared, but somehow for for that participants you can share that.
For sure. So as I said early on, one of the reasons why I took on such a project is because in the back of my mind, while leaving Saudi Arabia and going to Canada, I was told by a friend's father that I need to work on something that can have an impact on people's lives. So I wasn't sure exactly what that would look like going into university and starting my undergraduate career, but I knew that it was something that I was probably going to do at some point in my life. It just wasn't clear to me back then what it was. And when the opportunity presented itself, with Yusuf's mother talking to us about that problem, I decided that this could potentially be that problem that I will be tackling. And the startup journey began from there.
Okay, thank you so much. So we are at the very end of the program. So what is the advice from you to all the participants of Entrepreneurship World Cup? And also many of the participants have joined who are actually are students are doing undergrad in different universities in today's program. As I said, there are more than 300 plus participants has registered for your program. So they actually wanted to listen to you. So what are the suggestions and why they should join Entrepreneurship World Cup this year?
So in terms of general advice, I probably would say that make sure that you have the right team when you're building your own startup. It's not an easy thing to build the right team and find the right partners to work with, but this is probably one of the biggest investments you're going to make as you begin your own startup journey. Uh, don't just work with someone because they're your friend or someone you like, because that's actually a double-edged sword. If
Yes.
things don't go well, sometimes you end up losing both your business and your friendship. So just make sure that you actually select the right people to work with when you're starting your own business. That's one piece of advice. Now, as a suggestion going into the Entrepreneurship World Cup, I would highly recommend participating for more than one reason. If you're still starting off, it's a great way to validate your business idea. You're going to get grilled by mentors, by judges who will challenge you on a lot of your assumptions. And it will help you refine your business and your business model even further. If you're far along and you're at a point where you feel the exposure is going to help you, the Entrepreneurship World Cup is probably one of the best places to get that exposure. And you never know who you're going to meet. There's this very famous quote that I live by, which is by Wayne Gretzky, who is a hockey player over here, and he says, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." So make sure you always take on new opportunities. You try to tackle on or take on new adventures, meet new people, expand your network, grow that network as much as you can, because you never know who you're going to meet. That person could potentially be a business partner. That person could be a customer. He could be a mentor, and they could help propel and move your business forward. So I would highly recommend participating. Even if you don't advance, try again. Don't give up, and make sure you're working on something that you have the passion and drive for.
Yeah, so that's awesome. So I hope they have got the insight from you, and I hope they this way they can actually think of their business or ideas. As you tell that Entrepreneurship World Cup is a great place to validate their idea. Not only if you might be in the national final. Or in the top 10 or top 15 of national final, but you actually can get a good know-how about what is happening, how the investor or the judges want to know more about your ideas or business. So this way you can actually still in for the Bangladeshi perspective, you can still apply for the Entrepreneurship World Cup Bangladesh. And last but not the least, thank you, Amar, for giving your valuable time. As we all know, you are very busy in your business. You are very young, and that's why I'm asking you to share your thought, because actually young people can actually inspire the young people most. So that's why and thanks for accepting our invitation and share your valuable thought with our participants, and hope you will join in some other programs with us in the future, so that they can get some more insight from you as well in the coming days. So any last thing
Thank
you want to
you.
share for all? I mean, not only so many of the participants are here are not from in Bangladesh, some other country as well. So anything you want to share for them?
First of all, thank you again for having me today. It was my pleasure joining and talking a little bit about our journey. But maybe as a last thought, if anyone would like to connect or have any further questions about the Entrepreneurship World Cup, or maybe general questions about startups and business ideas, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Or I can also maybe type my email here for people to connect in the chat. Feel free to reach out. I'll try my best to get back to you as soon as I can. And if anyone has any questions or any further thoughts, I'd be happy to sit down and discuss it.
Hope they all have got your email in the chat box. And thank you so much, Amar, again, so for your valuable time. And that was a phenomenal session, and the insights you have shared, that will be really helpful for all the young entrepreneurs. And I will share the video with you, not only you, also all the participants, and it will be in the recorded live in the YouTube as well. So hope your business and your coming days will be much more. It will be a great journey with NERv Technology, and many more things will come in the very soon. I hope from the NERv Technology. So thank you so much, Amar,
Thank
for
you.
joining us, and it was a great session indeed. And I hope our
Excellent.
participants have got some great insight from you as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you so much.